he, in whom few believe, got as far as he did in his life, he believes that others can also overcome obstacles and accomplish a great deal in their lives. So please, we'll welcome with an applause Mr. Dorje. And I'm pretty sure that he can teach us many lessons from Nepal that maybe here in Mexico we're also facing because of similar situations. So please have the word.
Thanks. Thanks for the welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to do a couple of things. To begin with, I'd like to thank my friend way out in the corner there, Mariana, for getting the ball rolling. For those of you wondering why I, a Nepalese from the other side of the planet, am here in Mexico, she's to blame. She brought me here, in a way. We met in Italy, as Laura here mentioned, Claudia, sorry, mentioned, went to school in Italy, and Mariana and I, we were students in Italy a long time ago. And I would also like to thank Laura Gonzalez, who is not here, who arranged for me to come here and speak to you, and of course Claudia making all of the other arrangements. The presentation, as you can see, is about human rights and education of marginalized Nepalese. I was born in a small village in the hills to a tailor family, a Dalit, and therefore an untouchable family. From when I was a little girl, because we were so poor, I had to do a lot of chores at home instead of going to school regularly. When I would go to school, my Dalit friends and I were not included in many of the activities anyway. So I quit. I was sent to Kathmandu to work as a domestic help. In the city, I met a Newar man, a higher caste, who agreed to marry me and take me to his village. I had lied to him about being a Newar myself. Life in his village, with his family, was much better than in my own. Because they considered me a Newar, they included me in all the social activities and religious functions until my in-laws discovered my caste. They then threw me and my two boys out. As I don't have any means of making a living, I have been struggling to provide for my boys. I want to go abroad to work, but since I don't have any form of identification, I cannot get travel documents. I don't know what to do. I was born into a Tharu family in the Terai, the southern plains of Nepal, which meant birth as a Kamaiya into a life of poverty and indentured servitude. Our days were spent tilling the land of our landlord. Our family got half of the harvest, insufficient to feed us. So every year, my family took more loans. We also sold one of my sisters into Kamlari. So one day, when a broker came to our village and sold my father the idea of sending me to Qatar, our family was finally able to dream of a better future. I could make 30,000 rupees, about $300 a month, much more money than my family made even in a year. All my dad had to do was to take some more loans to pay the recruitment fees of 110,000 rupees, about $1,100. Since I would be able to save at least half my salary every month, he showed us how we would be able to pay off the debt within 1 year. Qatar, however, didn't end my family's sufferings. Along with my dozen co-workers, I have not been paid for at least 5 months. I worry about my parents and siblings, especially my sisters. My colleagues and I don't know what to do. Who do we go for help? Who do we ask for help? Where do we go for help? We don't even know if there's anyone who could help us. I don't know what to do. I was born into a low socioeconomic background, and living in our village with my grandfather, I was destined for a life of limited opportunities. I wasn't even meant to go to school. I wasn't even meant to have made it to school. When I did make it to school, the expectation was that I would drop out soon. Luckily for me, a teacher at this public school recognized my potential and told my dad to put me in a private school in Kathmandu. After being shuttled from one public school to another in Pokhara, I found myself enrolled at St. Xavier's School in Kathmandu, a Jesuit school, just like this university, I'm told. My parents could afford to send me there as the Jesuits subsidized the fees. The high-quality education I was receiving as a primary school student when in grade 5 made me realize and decide that education would be my ticket out of poverty. My motivation and drive to succeed and my dedication to my studies paid off when I won a full scholarship to the United World College of the Adriatic, an international school in Italy, where I met Mariana. And then admission to Grinnell College with almost 100% financial aid package. Following my studies, I had a professional career as an international teacher for over 15 years, teaching in 10 different countries, spread over 5 continents, and traveling to about 3 dozen other countries. As you may have already guessed, based on what Claudia also shared, the third story is indeed my own personal story. The first 2 stories hold true of Nepalese belonging to marginalized groups, notably Dalits, women, and those belonging to ethnic groups such as the Tharus and Tamangs. In the remainder of the remainder of the talk, I will be doing a number of things. I will firstly be providing details of how these marginalized Nepalese suffer both at home and abroad as described because of violations of some of their most basic human rights. Next, I will be describing what education is like in Nepal to show you how and why quality education will help marginalized Nepalese. And lastly, finally, what Committed, the non-profit organization I run with my friend Jaijeev, does with education to help them free themselves. I know quality education will make the difference to others from backgrounds similar to mine because it made all the difference to me. Nepal, as most of you probably know, is a tiny country sandwiched between the 2 Asian giants of India and China. Once a monarchical Hindu state, Nepalese social structure has always been very hierarchical. There has always been the hierarchy of class, but it is also vastly stratified owing to the caste system. Formalized in 1854 with the promulgation of the Nepal Legal Code, referred to as the Mulaki Ain in the Nepali language, basically the caste system, is based entirely on Hindu orthodoxy and classifies people into 5 hierarchic castes. At the top are the wearers of holy thread, the high castes. Next are the non-enslavable alcohol drinkers. Third come the enslavable alcohol drinkers, the Tamangs, and people like myself from Mustang district, referred to as Bhote. The fourth are the impure but touchable ones, such as the Tharus from the southern plains. Then at the bottom are the untouchable castes, from whom the high castes cannot accept water and whose touch requires sprinkling of holy water. These are the Dalits, the occupational workers, such as the tailors, the cobblers, blacksmiths, etc., and therefore unclean. The first and the most obvious way untouchability of Dalits is enforced is through segregation of their residential area. All Dalits in a village are made to live on streets reserved just for them, away from everyone else. The following are some of the numerous other ways their freedom and rights are curtailed. They're denied entry in houses, restaurants, temples, and participation in or entry into social and public activities and functions, etc. They're denied access to community resources. They're denied equal opportunities to enter labor markets, etc. Higher castes expect obeisance from them. They're made victims of atrocities more than others, such as rape of Dalit women. These practices are most severe in the southern plains. The following video, made by my friend Sabina Srestha, a journalist for Al Jazeera, is about the victimization of one such Dalit group in the south.
People in the Nepalese town of Lahan wake up to the sound of street sweepers, but they avoid them, afraid to even touch them, because they are from the Dome castes. All Hindus are born into a caste system here, a rigidly hierarchical process that gives social status based on what people do for a living. The Brahmin castes are considered to be the purest, and the Dalits or untouchables are the lowest. 13% of all Nepalese are Dalits, and their work often involves dirty or so-called polluted things. And even within the Dalit community, there is a group called the Domes. Ramchandra Malik is one of them.
When a person dies, the family has to buy the fire from us to cremate the body. Ironically, they say that a dom is needed for a safe passage for the soul.
And it is the Dome's association with the dead and death rituals that makes them dirty or highly untouchable under Hindu cultural beliefs.
This well is used by the local community here, consisting mostly of Dalits. And yet, the Domes are not allowed to touch this well, as they are considered to be the untouchables, even amongst the Dalits.
The Domes have to wait for someone from a higher caste to fill up their pots. For Malik, the daily humiliation was too much to bear.
When we'd go to restaurants, our friends would get served, but not us, so I organised a campaign to forcefully enter the restaurants. When we went in, they said there was no food, so we served ourselves.
The higher caste did not take the defiance kindly, and the Domes lost their jobs as sweepers. When the local administration refused to listen to them, Malik appealed to the district authorities. Now Malik is known as a neta or a leader. He was even a candidate in the last parliamentary elections. But it is within his own community that Malik faces some of his toughest challenge. One of the reasons people avoid the domes is because of their job collecting dead animals, and Malik wants to stop the practice.
If you dispose of a dead dog, you get 200 rupees. When I tell them not to do so, they say, give me 200 rupees. Because they pick up dead dogs, people don't touch them.
Overcoming the deep prejudice and stigma his community faces is an enormous challenge. And with all the problems in Nepal, those who are discriminated against are often forgotten. Sabina Shrestha, Al Jazeera, Sirah District, Nepal.
Women, the other marginalized group, today fare no better. The root cause of the problem is our patriarchal society. Sons are seen as the source of honor and pride for and as future caregivers of the family, etc., and therefore provided considerably more life opportunities. Daughters, on the other hand, are seen as someone else's property, since when married, they go and live with and take care of someone else's family. The following two clips from two short videos, also by my friend Sabina, highlights some of the issues faced by rural girls and women. The first one is about the difficulties pregnant women face in rural Nepal and the difficulties women and girls face in general.
Survive. Birth in Nepal. Living in the city, it is easy to take everything for granted. The availability of hospitals, doctors, the state-of-the-art support. The sight of my unborn baby moving inside me is exciting. I'm told that I have nothing to fear. I have incredible support, and I'm sure that everyone here will do his or her best to make sure that I and my child will survive. Yet, statistics say that every 4 hours, one woman in Nepal dies from pregnancy-related causes. I've decided to see for myself what the reality is for most women to give birth in my country. After 2 days of travel, we reach the village of Majkhalo in Acham district. Here we meet 31-year-old Basanti Sarki. She has 5 children, 3 daughters and 2 sons, aged from 13 to 2. The 6th one is on the way any day now.
14 वर्षको भएको हो कि बे 17 वर्षको बच्चा भएको बुढा अब इन्डिया जान्छन् अस्पतालमा काम गर्छन् यहाँको कामले 2 महिना पनि पुग्दैन उहाँ दिएपछि खान्छन् तर नि.
Now that Basanti is pregnant, her 13-year-old daughter Sunita has taken over most of the housework. Most daughters start working from as early as 7 years of age.
छोरा वैसे अब कोही कामहरु खान्छन् नहर्ने उनी डाके चलाउँछन् छकालै जान्छन् बाहाइ आउँछन् हामी अब छोरी बासा भोले काम हुँदै हिलिरहन्छन् आमा अब यही बेला बाँच्ने हुन्थ्यो उठी यसरी हड खाइदो सुत्दो हुन्थ्यो
खाल्नु हो त्यो त धेरै डर लाग्छ के त अब हुने कहिले पो छ बाँच्ने हो कि मर्ने हो भने त 2-3 महिना अगाडि चिन्ता लाग्छ हाम्रो ने त्यसरी अब बच्चा पाउँदाखेरि मर्याको त छैन बच्चा पाएको 4-5 दिनपछि एक आइमा मर्याकी छ यहाँ एक बच्चा फाले भुइँ पडिसकेपछि 1 घण्टा पछि 1.5 घण्टा पछि यहाँ त्यहाँ पर पुनः मर्याकी छ यो.
Basanti has no plans to go to the hospital, which is over 5 hours away. Even if she wanted to, she cannot find anyone to take care of her children. Just in case of possible complications, we decided to meet a local nurse, Lakshmi Upadhyaya, who is also a midwife.
सिरियस केस आयो भने त गाह्रो हुन्छ नि यहाँ जस्तो अछाममा हाम्रो एउटा डाक्टर मात्रै हुनुहुन्छ हैन उहाँ पनि गाइनोकोलोजिस्ट हैन जनरल डाक्टर हो हैन अनि हामीहरुलाई त अछाम जिल्लामा एउटा गाइनोकोलोजिस्ट हैन सर्जन नै चाहिन्थ्यो त्यो भइदिएको भयो भने बोकाएर भए पनि मान्छेले 5-6 घण्टा अथवा 2 दिन टाढाबाट ल्याएर पनि केही राहत हुन्थ्यो त्यो केही पनि छैन हामीसँग त अनि त्यसले गर्दाखेरि कतिपय त अनि गाउँमै मर्छन्
उनकी भन्दिन होला तपाईको श्रीमती पाकले पढेकै छोटाटी भ्यागी छ चिन्ता नमान्नु भन्दिनु आज 2 दिन भ्या बेली भा 6 बजे भ्याक्यौं
A newborn in the village means more work for Urmila, the community health volunteer. Some 50,000 women like Urmila, working around the country, have been credited for cutting down the number of deaths amongst mothers and children.
उइलका मान्छेको उइ छ छोराका लागि ढुकेका छौं भन्दा त अति त्यो भन यही पालाई भन फालिल्ने छौं बौराजु न छोरो हुन्छ के भनि राख्या उइले भन्यो नि त रुई छोरी भइन आमा त मान्दिछि बुवाले जे अब बुवा पनि 2 छोरा छँदै 4 रे त छोरी हुन् बुदाखेरि अब के मान्थ्यो मबाट केही कुरो थिएन मबाट कुरो दिएन के रुती
This one is about a traditional practice called chaupadi, where menstruating girls and women are segregated every month because they're considered unclean.
For 5 days every month, Bishna Bogote has to come to this shed underneath her house to sleep. In far western Nepal, menstruating women are not allowed to sleep in their houses because people consider them unclean.
The older generation say that the tigers will come. They say that the gods will be angry.
Many Nepalis consider menstruating women to be impure and untouchable.
This shed is absolutely tiny. It's impossible to stand straight. You can touch both walls with your hands. And this is supposed to be one of the bigger sheds. It's absolutely dark over here once you close this door.
It's what happens in the dark that Bishna is afraid of. Many women have been raped. Many others have died, some bitten by snakes and others from asphyxiation after lighting fires to stay warm. A few hours down the road is the house of Ishwari Bhul, whose 14-year-old daughter was found dead in their menstrual shed. Sharmila Bhul was in the 9th grade. The parents don't understand what happened.
Some say it was because of the lack of oxygen in the shed. Some say it was because of the cold. It was winter at the time.
Even though the government banned the use of menstrual sheds in 2005, 90% of villagers still abide by the traditional rules in these parts. But there are some villages that are trying to change that. In the village of Bhageshwari, last year the men and the women decided that they needed to stop this tradition. They met with a lot of criticism.
After we boycotted the tradition during monsoon, we had a problem. It rained all around us, but it did not rain in our village. Everyone said it was because we had stopped staying in our menstrual huts.
It rained after a month. Then I told people, you said it would not rain, but it did. And our women are still staying home.
There are women from nearby villages who stay on a rock all night. They may be eaten by tigers. We have to warn them. We're not happy that we're the only ones free from menstrual segregation.
This used to be a community menstrual shed. Most of the other sheds have been demolished, but the women of Bhageshwari have kept this one to remember how they spent many years suffering. Sabina Shrestha, Al Jazeera, Acham, far western Nepal.
Even the law of the land gives more rights to men. For instance, a woman can inherit her parents' property only if she is single and over 35. If she gets married, though, the property reverts to her male siblings. And as you can see, it's no wonder then that property and land ownership by women in the country is less than 20%. To be sure, women are underrepresented in pretty much every social, economic, and political sphere. And I'm certain that it's our valuing the lives of our females so much less that has led to their biggest killer being suicide. Moving on to the next marginalized group, the Tharus in the plains, they continue to suffer as a consequence of past injustices. The Tharus' poverty in the face of discrimination and violation of their rights is so extreme that they are currently indentured laborers in their own land, referred to as kamaya. Some forced to sell their daughters into bondage called kamlaris. Here's a clip from yet another documentary by my friend Subina about their plight and the practice of kamlari.
Slavery in Nepal has been abolished by law. But behind the high walls of many city homes here, young girls continue to serve as slaves. Known as kamlaris, they are the daughters of indebted farmers sold to landlords for little to no money. They were declared free in the year 2000, but kamlaris are still kept by Nepal's elite, including government officials and decision makers.
These people have the connections. If any case is filed against them, they are able to bend judgments to their favor. They are able to threaten poor families. They are the ones with land, and if they do not get kamlaris, they may give the land to someone else to farm.
But today some are fighting back against Nepal's feudal traditions. June 2013. Former kamlaris from all over Nepal are protesting outside the government complex in Kathmandu. Just weeks before, 12-year-old kamlari girl Srijana Chaudhary had burned to death under mysterious circumstances at her owner's house here in the city. Outraged, these women who have all worked in servitude are demanding a full inquiry into Srijana's death and an end to slavery once and for all. It was a lonely battle for them. Political parties, human rights groups, child rights groups all stayed away from the protest. When the women tried to enter the government buildings, police reacted with brutality. Srijana, like all kamlaris, was from the indigenous Tharu community. Their history of subordination began 160 years ago with Nepal's first social order, ranking Tharus almost bottom of the caste system, just above the untouchables. Their land was taken away from them, and they became bonded labor on the land that was once theirs. Srijana's parents rely on the goodwill of their landlord for access to land, and must give up half the produce they grow. They also gave up their daughter.
We did not want to send Srijana, but the landlady came and said that I should send my daughter to Kathmandu. She said my daughter would become clever if she stayed in the city.
Srijana's death became a tipping point for Nepal's kamlaris, but there have been many others who have suffered at the hands of their landlords and owners. In the last 5 years, 4 other kamlaris have died under mysterious circumstances. 27 are missing from the homes they worked in, and 11 girls became pregnant. The government declared the kamlari system illegal more than 10 years ago. Yet landlords still use their land as leverage to secure kamlaris. Poor Tharu families often feel they have few other options and give up their daughters for little to no cash in return.
and for many girls, their workplaces become dangerous as they grow older.
What all of that has meant in the country is a disproportionately high representation of not only men, but high caste men, both in civil service and private sector, for instance. High caste men of 30 or over who constitute only 5% of the population has held and continue to hold an overwhelming positions of power in the country. That, in spite of anti-discrimination, all of that, in spite of anti-discrimination laws being passed first in 1963 and then in 1990, and education being made universal, etc. Recently, a 10-year civil war was fought between 1995 and 2005. One of the rallying calls for ordinary Nepalese to join the armed struggle was the promise of a just society based on the principles of equality, as summarized very well in the following clip from the documentary Born Polluted.
Bishnu Nepali is herself a Dalit and works in an organization aiming at improving the rights of Dalits. She is going on a field trip to Sarlahi, where the rat-eating Musars live. Here, in the southern plains of Nepal, the groups in the lower level of the caste system still live in utter misery compared with the low caste in the mountains.
यदि दलितहरूलाई सबभन्दा तल्लो ठाउँबाट उठाउने हो भने दलितलाई एउटा एजुकेसन एकदमै महत्त्वपूर्ण कुरा हो स्ट्रङ ल पनि भयो भने यदि आफूलाई अर्को मान्छेले अन्याय गरे भने त्यो पुलिसकोमा जान्छन् अदालतमा जान्छन् तर त्यहाँनेर ठीक जस्टिस पाउँदैनन्.
The organization where Bishnu works helps Musars apply for citizenship papers, which most of the low caste inhabitants of Juttapani don't have. The illiterate Musars were not aware of the importance of identification documents. The huge support to the Maoist movement can be explained by the fact that they aimed at breaking the age-old caste hierarchy. The rebels also gained support in Sarlahi, but after the peace process started, it has since died down.
माओइस्टहरुको पनि त्यहाँ पनि आशा थियो पहिला चाहिँ यो जब वारको समय थियो तर त्यतिबेला उनीहरुको नारा थियो सबै मानिसहरु समान छन्.
नेकपा ए माओवादीले उठाएका सवालहरु पूर्ण समानुपातिक प्रतिनिधित्व नै हो सुरुमा. त्यसपछि माओवादीले उठाएको दोस्रो सवाल भनेको जाति विभेदको अन्त नै भने हो र यो नेकपा ए माओवादीले पहिले उठाएका समानताका कुराहरु असमान स्थितिमा हामी त्यहाँ पनि फिल गर्यौं.
The Musars work the fields of the high caste, harvesting 5 kilograms of rice for €1.5 per day. They still live in total dependence of the region's landowners. The salary is not enough to feed a family with many children. The Musars collect the rice that drops on the fields during the harvest and hunt rats that live under the fields for food. Therefore, they are called the rat eaters.
Following the Civil War and the abolishment of the monarchy, there was considerable hope in all quarters for a more inclusive constitution to begin breaking down the inherent structural inequality in our caste-based society. Many hoped that a new constitution would pave the way for a considerably more egalitarian and socially equitable society. In 2008, elections were held for the first Constituent Assembly, and they were entrusted with writing a new and inclusive constitution. Failing to do so, after 4 years, the Constituent Assembly was dissolved in 2012, and another round of elections were held in November 2013. The Constitution was finally promulgated last month on September 20. It, however, disappointed many. Women, for instance, the Constitution treats women, for instance, as second-class citizens still. Single women and women married to foreign men cannot pass on her citizenship to her children. Nepalese in the southern plains, feeling totally betrayed by the Constitution, have been protesting since the middle of August, from when the draft of the Constitution was publicized. Their main point of contention being the demarcation of the federal provinces in the area. The protests, which have killed approximately 45 people already, are still ongoing. People in the hills, on the other hand, are still reeling from the aftermath of the biggest natural calamity to hit the country, the April 25 earthquake. 6 months on, reconstruction and rehabilitation of most of the millions directly or indirectly affected by the earthquake, have not begun in earnest, even though winter is already around the corner. The situation has been further complicated and compounded by the unofficial economic blockade imposed by India, leading to severe shortages of fuel, food, and other essential items. Life in Nepal right now is in complete disarray. The discriminations, the limitations and restrictions on the lower castes and other marginalized groups over pretty much the entire modern history of the country has continuously been widening the economic rift. And now, even in the aftermath of a civil war fought to correct that, following the abolishment of the monarchy to make amends, following the country sluggishly lurching forward for almost 10 years without a constitution, following the recent earthquake, following the unrest in the south and the economic blockade, and following the promulgation of the Constitution the whole country had been waiting for so long, that rift, that economic rift, promises to widen still. Starting in the middle of the last decade, shackled by poverty and lacking in opportunities in the country, an increasing number of marginalized Nepalese started buying hope in the form of passage to foreign countries they knew very little about. According to 2011 census report, almost 2 million Nepalese live abroad. Half of them were from the age group 15 to 24. These numbers, incidentally, do not include those living in India. About 500,000 left the country through legal channels in 2012-2013 alone. Apparently, about 2,000 leave every day legally. For every 4 that leave legally, 1 leaves illegally via India. A vast number of those women going to the Gulf region because the government has placed a ban on it. Heavily laden with debts, these semi and unskilled poor Nepalese migrants fall into yet another trap of discrimination, exploitation, and thus suffer from violation of their rights in the destination countries as well. And it may surprise you, many of you, to also learn that prospective Nepalese migrants try to make their way to the United States of America via Mexico. After arriving here on ships, yes, Nepalese migrants from a landlocked country are that desperate. Qatar is one of the most popular destinations. I myself was a migrant for over 15 years, traveling and working around the world as an international science teacher. In August 2011, my own movements took me to Qatar, just as Claudia mentioned earlier. I read about, heard, and saw with my own eyes how the Nepalese and other Asian workers were mistreated in the country. In spite of my qualifications and experience, I wasn't spared the treatment either. I suffered from discrimination and even incarceration in Qatar. Based on the words of his 12-year-old son, a Qatari father lodged felony charges against me for allegedly insulting Islam, and I was jailed. During my time in jail, I met other Nepalese who had also been incarcerated on trumped-up charges. The most heart-wrenching story was that of a young man from the southwestern plains who everyone called Chotu. Chotu and the rest of the crew used to get together at the end of the workday to hose themselves down with an air hose. The procedure removed dust and anything else clinging to their clothes and bodies. One afternoon, one of them was taken a little ill after the process. Chotu and a few others rushed him to the hospital. Sadly, the man died 2 days later. Matters took a turn for the worse for Chotu and his friends. They were all charged with the murder of the man and sent to jail. Unable to speak Arabic and without representation of any kind, he did not know much of the details of his case, including how the man died and why he had been charged with his murder. While all the workers jailed on trumped-up charges like Chotu had no help from anyone, on the 8th day of my own incarceration, friends of mine had Doha News and Washington Post publish my story. When friends around the world, including those from St. Xavier School, United World College, friends like Mariana from United World College, and Grinnell College friends picked up the stories, they rallied behind me and initiated a worldwide campaign to free me on human rights grounds. Within 4 days of initiating it, the campaign had gotten so big that I was released. I returned home. On May 13 after spending 12 days in jail. Upon returning to Nepal, I sometimes worked as an assistant and translator to my journalist friend, Pete Patterson, in an effort to do my bit, providing a voice for the voiceless. The following video, detailing the suffering of a fellow Nepalese, was shot on a trip to Janakpur Pete and I made in November 2013.
त्यही हो अब मेहनत गरेर पनि अब त्यहाँ जस्तो राम्रो श्रम आइपुग्दैन हैन 2-4 पैसा कमाओस् भन्ने सोचले नै गएको हो त्यसकै लागि अब पैसा जसले पनि बाँच्नको लागि चाहिहाल्छ लाइफमा मुख्य समस्या त सबभन्दा पहिला कुरा बस्ने कुरा थिएन बस्नकै लागि कोठामा अब चाहिने सामग्रीहरू थिएन बेडसिटहरू थिएन पानीको पनि समस्या हुन्थ्यो अब क्याम्पमा अब ड्युटीबाट आएपछि नुहाउनु पर्यो हैन अब भनौँ न मेसिनहरू जस्तो कि एसीहरू बिग्रिएको छ भने अब बनाइदिन्थेन हाम्रोमा किचनमा कस्तो थियो भन्दाखेरि तपाईको केही सामान थिएन मतलब सामान थिएन भन्दाखेरि अब काट्ने कुराहरू अब हुन्छ नि एउटा मतलब साफ गर्ने पानी पनि त्यति आउँथेन हैन अब फ्रिज दिएकै थिएन अब खाना हामीले बनाएपछि बिग्रिन्थ्यो त्यो हाम्रो क्याम्पमा आउँदाखेरि तिमीहरू मतलब नेपालीहरू गधा नै हुन् अब काम मात्रै गर्न जान्छन् तिनीहरू गधा जस्तो के किन चाहिन्छ एसी फ्रिज किन चाहिन्छ यिनीहरूलाई कहाँ नेपालमा पाउँछ अनि सेलेरी पनि टाइममा आउँथेन ओभर टाइममा पनि अब काम त गराउँथ्यो काम गर्नेलाई अब त्यो कम्पनीको इच्छा अनुसारको हैन ओभर टाइम जति गरेको छ त्यति पाउँथेन मतलब दिन्थ्यो तर काटेर दिन्थ्यो कसैले एकै गर्दै कसैले के त्यहाँ अधिकांश साथीहरूको आइडी कार्ड थिएन 160-65 जना थियो त्यसमध्ये मलाई लाग्छ 20-25 जनाको मात्रै थियो भ्यालुएबल आइडेन्टिटी कार्ड त्यो थिएन त्यो नभएको खण्डमा हामी क्याम्पबाट कहीँ साथीलाई भेट्न जानु पर्दाखेरि पुलिसले भेटाएपछि समाएर लान्थ्यो अब समातेर लगेपछि कि त कम्पनी आउनु पर्यो छुटाउनलाई भिसा एप्लाई गरेर अब के कसरी हुन्थ्यो उनीहरूले मिलाएर ल्याउँथ्यो तर हाम्रो कम्पनीले के गर्थ्यो ल्याइदिन्थेन मान्छे मेनली हडताल गरेको कारण त्यही भने मैले 10 जना साथीहरू हैन अब जसलाई अब अर्को महिना पठाइदिन्छु भन्दा पनि 3 महिनासम्म मतलब बिना सेलेरीमा पठाइदिएन उसको एग्रिमेन्ट पनि पुरा भइसकेको थियो र पनि पठाइदिएन त्यो साथीहरूले त्यसपछि सबैजनामा एउटा सहमति गर्यो कि अब के गर्ने सबैको आखिर त्यस्तै सिस्टम रहेछ जसले पनि त्यस्तै गर्थ्यो आखिर मैले पनि 2 वर्षमा भ्याकेसन दिने भनेको थियो दिएन टाइममा दिन्थेन केयरलेस गरिदिन्थ्यो अनि सेलेरी पनि नदिने तिनीहरूलाई फेरि सुताएर अनि कसरी खास के गरी बाँच्छस् त नि अब उनीहरूको नजरमा म त्यति बेला त्यो सबै मान्छेले बिगार्ने लिडर जस्तो भइसकेको थिएँ हैन त्यही भएर त्यति बेलाको मतलब सिचुएसन एकदमै गम्भीर थियो त्यति बेला कस्तो स्थिति आइसकेको थियो भन्दाखेरि मतलब कतै पनि केही नभए मतलब कहाँ फसेको छु जस्तो लाग्थ्यो कि त्यही भएर मैले भनेको थिएँ एउटा हिन्दी फिल्मको त्यो डायलग भनौँ न जिन्दगी के तलाश में हम मौत के मुँह में आ गए भनेर भनेको थिएँ मैले हैन
He was one of the lucky ones to escape with his life. Many aren't that lucky. According to the most recent report, on average, 4 dead bodies of migrants arrive at Kathmandu International Airport every single day. The death of the breadwinner plunges the surviving family into even more of a precarious situation. The dreams of their children, the innocent victims, are shattered. To me, it's clear, beyond any doubt, that education freed me twice. Firstly, from the shackles of birth in a low socioeconomic background in Nepal, and secondly, from a potential 7-year jail sentence in Qatar. And what is also clear is that education can do the same to fellow Nepalese. Unfortunately, though, we still have major issues with our educational system. Quality of public education in Nepal is very, very poor. Those who suffer as a consequence of that are, of course, the poor and the marginalized. The following clip from the Al Jazeera documentary, School for $1, provides a glimpse into the flawed school systems in the southern plains, where most of the disadvantaged people, Dalits and Tharus, live.
Every village in the area is mired in poverty, and the distance between schools is vast.
In remote areas of Nepal, there are very few schools, and the ones that do exist have poor infrastructure, even though they're supposed to get the same amount of funding per child as every other government school. Some locals have told us about some classes that are operating outdoors because the school can't afford to build classrooms.
This is the Bageshwari Titrana school. Locally, it's known as a sack school because children have to sit on sacks under a tree. There is a fragile shelter that parents built themselves and a few small school benches.
We didn't receive funds from the government, and so we raised money from the village to build this hut for the school so that our children can study. There are 2 teachers who don't even receive their salaries. There is lack of everything here.
Funding for schools is determined by the number of students. Narayan Prasad Gamir is the president of a school management committee in the nearby Bara district. It's his job to verify the number of students, which determines the per-child funding from the government.
Some kids that don't even come at all.
He admits he has to increase the numbers so that the school can afford to pay teachers.
At our school, in the register, there are 120 students enrolled, but on an average, in a daily basis, 60 to 70 students come.
He says officials in the district education office refuse to release money for books and new classrooms unless they're paid bribes.
To make them happy, we have to pay bribes. There is widespread corruption here. The amount of corruption in the education sector in this Bara district is more than anywhere.
Private schools, where the wealthy and powerful send their children, are a different kettle of fish altogether. Here's a clip from the same documentary about a private school in Kathmandu.
Rato Bangla is one of Kathmandu's most prestigious schools. The quality of teaching and education is taken very seriously here.
I'm Prachi Adhikari. I'm 13 years old and I study in Rato Bangla grade 8. I really feel lucky because I think that Rato Bangla has such a nice facility for students, like the studies and all are really great. And my hobbies are painting, I just love painting, and then singing, dancing. Art for me is a way of expressing my feelings. When I'm angry or anything, I just pour it out in a paper in form of art. I've been doing art since I was a child. I have a deep interest in it.
The difference in the quality of education between private and public schools is reflected, among other things, in the results of the school leaving certificate examinations, essentially high school diploma examinations. As you can see, in 2014, more than twice as many students from public schools, referred to as government schools up there, twice as many students sat for the SLC, twice as many public school students sat for the examinations. But while the private school results are good, public school results are abysmal. What's most alarming is that a vast majority of public school students fail, while it's the opposite for private school students. Qualifications of the population, according to the census report, are also quite pitiful. We have a population that consists of less than 10% that have completed 12 years of education. With the system of education in Nepal right now, especially in public schools, it is very challenging for most Nepalese children to get an education that is in any way practical. Forget about an education that makes them lifelong learners, critical thinkers, problem solvers, etc., etc., etc. To be sure, there is a lot of work to be done when it comes to the emancipation of the marginalized people of Nepal. Policy and advocacy work on the education system of the country and on the plight of semi- and unskilled migrant Nepalese, for instance, being only 2 of them. The other being fixing what was destroyed by the earthquake of April 25th, which has set the country back considerably. 16,000 public and private schools, roughly half of all schools in the country, are estimated to have been destroyed by the earthquake, affecting almost 1 million students. But even after 6 months, as I mentioned earlier, reconstruction has not begun because the government has yet to publicize the new building codes. Long before my ordeal in Qatar, I'd wanted to make something of myself and make a difference in the lives of others from similar background through education. Just 2 months before the ordeal, I had decided to return home to do just that. So, returning to Nepal, in May 2013, I was determined more than ever to help children of marginalized Nepalese realize their dreams through quality education. One does not necessarily need lots of expensive and fancy resources for that, not in rural Nepal anyway. At Community Members Interested, where I work as the Education Program Director, instead of working on, for instance, policy and attempting to bring about systemic changes, we work on the ground. We work directly with communities suffering from low-quality education and significant migration to urban centers within the country and to countries abroad, such as Qatar. To that end, Committed has been promoting the holistic and sustainable development of target communities through the establishment of social business for education projects. Our current project site is Thangpalkot village in Sindhupalchok district. The indigenous population is Tamang, another marginalized group. In addition to suffering from discrimination because of their lower status in the caste system, the Tamangs are also some of the poorest in the country. The district of Sindhupalchok also has the dubious distinction of being the district where girl-child trafficking started. As you may have guessed, they still suffer from that because of poverty and lack of education. And for the same reasons, Sindhupalchok suffered the most casualties in the April earthquake. Almost a third of all deaths occurred in the district. The village of Thangpalkot, our project site, lost all but 6 of the 600 houses. The following video provides a glimpse into Raithani School in Thangpalkot, where we work. Though it was made in June 2013 to woo potential donors to my fundraising drive, it gives you an idea of the school before the earthquake.
I want to be a policeman.
I want to be an engineer.
I want to be a doctor. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a teacher. I want to be a doctor.
We're here in Sindhupalchok at the school that you're supporting. You've just heard the dreams and aspirations of the students. But there's a huge gap between their dreams and reality. The reality is that the school doesn't have enough classrooms. For instance, this particular classroom, they have had to put 2 different classes together. And right now, there are over 50 students in here. The other issue, the other challenge here is the quality of teaching. Although the teachers themselves are highly committed, they lack experience and they lack training to help the students realize their dreams. I'm incredibly grateful for the support that you provided me thus far. I need one final push to get us past the tipping point, to help the children of Sindapalchok achieve their dreams. The social business for education being established in Thangpalkot is a cooperative-based fishery. The village community and the school are both directly involved in the planning, implementation, and running of the fishery. We set up the first nursery cages in August 2013 in the school pond. The program was expanded into a few other natural and artificial ponds. When completely set up, the profits from the self-sustainable school business was to have been used mainly to run and support free, mandatory, and quality education at the school. Assistance to households was also provided to help them take up integrated fishery as an income-generating activity, thus addressing issues, livelihood issues, and poverty. We had envisioned the fishery to be completely set up and run by the community by the end of this year. In the meantime, we've been implementing sponsorship programs supporting children from marginalized communities, vulnerable to exploitation, such as Dalit children, girls, and children of dead migrants. Since returning to Nepal and beginning to work in Committed, and having begun working in Committed, we've added about 12 children to our program. We have both individual sponsors as well as business, as well as a business that support this program. Our hope, our goal is that quality education will provide freedom to the children we serve, freedom to dream unfettered, and freedom to chart their own destinies, just as I have been able to do, instead of their destinies being decided for them by others, as has been and is the case with thousands of marginalized Nepalese. And that brings me to the end of this presentation. Should you want more information, here's where you can find them. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.